The real estate agent called. "Your daughter scheduled a showing of your house." I said, "I still live here." There was silence. Then she whispered nervously, "She said you were." Gone. That's when I understood what my daughter was planning and decided to give her buyers a very special surprise. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax, let's begin. The phone rang just as I was about to deadhead the last of the peace roses. I wiped the soil from my hands onto my canvas apron, the scent of damp earth and crushed petals clinging to my skin. The sun was warm on the back of my neck. The kitchen telephone's cord was tangled, as usual, a loose spiral on the yellow linoleum. I answered with the cheerful breathlessness of someone pulled from a pleasant task. "Hello." The voice on the other end was young, professionally bright. "Good afternoon. May I speak with the executor of the Vance estate, please?" A beat of silence. I shifted the receiver, thinking I had misheard. "I'm sorry, who are you looking for?" "The estate executor," the woman repeated, her tone helpful. "For the property on Maple Crest Drive. I'm Marcy Thompson with Crestview Realty. We're confirming the showing scheduled for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. A cold, flat sensation began to spread beneath my ribs. My house, my address. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice careful. "This is Alina Vance. I own the home. It is not for sale." A longer silence from her end now. I could hear the faint tap of a keyboard. "Oh," she said. The bright professionalism faltered. "Oh, dear. Mrs. Vance, I was given to understand, that is, the listing party informed us that the owner, Alina Vance, was deceased, that her daughter, Lisa Vance Carter, was the sole heir and executor." The world did not tilt. It simply hardened every object in my sunlit kitchen, the chipped teapot on the stove, the photograph of my late husband Robert on the windowsill, the calendar with its circled gardening dates, taking on a sharp, brittle clarity. Deceased asterisk. The word hung in the air between us, a ghost she had conjured. "I am very much alive," I stated. The words felt heavy and formal in my mouth. I can see that this is a terrible misunderstanding." Her voice dropped to a nervous whisper, as if someone might overhear her speaking to a dead woman. "Your daughter, Lisa, she provided the death certificate and the will. Everything seemed in order." The coldness solidified into a dense, heavy weight in my stomach. Lisa, my Lisa. She had provided papers. She had told a story. She had planned a showing of my home, my life, for strangers to walk through and evaluate, while they believed my absence to be permanent. "A death certificate," I repeated. "Yes, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Vance. This is highly irregular. I'm so sorry to have disturbed you." She was babbling now, a young woman caught in a lie she hadn't crafted. "I'll cancel the showing immediately, of course. I'll need to speak with my broker about this. I'll call Lisa right away." "No," the word came out sharper than I intended. I closed my eyes, seeing not the kitchen but my daughter's face, the determined set of her jaw I knew so well, now directed at this. "Do not call her." "But the showing is still scheduled for tomorrow at 2. "Well, technically, yes, but—" "Then do not cancel it." I opened my eyes. My gaze landed on the garden shears I had left on the counter, their blades still flecked with green sap. "And do not call my daughter. You have given me the information I required. I will handle this." "Mrs. Vance, I really don't think that's advisable. This is a serious legal matter." "It is a serious family matter," I corrected her, my tone leaving no room for argument. It was the voice I had used in the library decades ago when a patron insisted they had returned a book they had not. A calm, immovable wall. "You will proceed as if you never reached me. Is that clear?" She hesitated. I could hear her weighing professional liability against the sheer, uncomfortable force of the situation. "This puts me in a very difficult position." "We are both in difficult positions, Ms. Thompson. I am in mine rather more literally. Do we have an understanding?" A defeated sigh whispered down the line. "Yes, okay. The showing is still on for tomorrow at 2. I'll be here." I thanked her and placed the receiver back in its cradle with a precise click. The silence of the house rushed in. It was not my familiar, companionable quiet. It was a new silence, hollowed out by betrayal. I stood there, my hand resting on the cool plastic of the phone, and looked at my life. This kitchen. We had chosen the yellow linoleum together, Robert and I, a bold choice in 1992. Lisa had spilled grape juice on it when she was 7, a stain we could never fully lift. The photograph of Robert was from our 20th anniversary. The garden outside the window was my 30-year project. Every scratch on the floor, every smudge on the paint, was a fossil of our existence. And Lisa wanted to sell it, to stage it, to erase us, to erase *me*. The initial shock began to recede, replaced by a methodical, icy clarity. This was not a spontaneous act. A death certificate requires effort. A will requires preparation. This was a plan. She had looked at my life, at the walls that held her childhood, and seen only an asset, a piece of real estate to be liquidated. She had declared me dead to facilitate the transaction. I walked from the kitchen into the living room. My books lined the shelves, organized by a system only I understood. My reading chair had the slight sag of decades of use. The quilt draped over its back was one my mother had made. It was all just stuff, but it was my stuff. It was the physical map of a lived-in life, and she had intended to have it packed away, donated, or discarded to make the space more appealing to strangers. A part of me wanted to crumble, to weep, to call her and scream. But a larger, quieter part, the part that had managed a household budget, raised a child alone after Robert passed, and curated a library collection for 30 years, began to assess. This was a problem with evidence, with timelines, with actors, a problem to be solved. She thought I was gone, a nonentity, a paper ghost. I was not gone. I was here, and I would be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. The anger was there, a deep, cold pool of it. But I did not touch it, not yet. Anger was fuel, not a steering wheel. I needed direction first. I needed to understand the full scope of her plan. There would be paperwork. Lisa was efficient. If she had gone this far, there would be files, emails, documents. She likely thought I would never look. Why would I? I trusted her. That trust was now a component of her strategy. She had banked on it. I turned from the living room and walked down the hallway to the small room I used as a home office. It was modest, with a sturdy oak desk and filing cabinets from the library's surplus sale. Lisa had helped me move them in. My computer sat dormant on the desk. I rarely used it, preferring paper and pen. I started with the desk drawers. Receipts, paid bills, gardening catalogs. Nothing. The filing cabinet labeled personal held insurance policies, Robert's old documents, Lisa's school records. I flipped through the folders, my movements deliberate. In the back of the bottom drawer, behind a stack of faded tax returns, my fingers brushed against a sleek, unfamiliar folder. I pulled it out. It was black with a glossy finish, not mine. I opened it. Inside were printouts, listing agreements from Crestview Realty, signed by Lisa Vance Carter as the property owner executor. A copy of a death certificate, my name, my birth date, a date of death from 6 weeks prior, cause of death, cardiac arrest. It looked official. It was a forgery. Seeing my own name next to those words sent a physical jolt through me, a nausea that had nothing to do with the stomach. Beneath that was a copy of a will, also forged. It left everything to Lisa, of course. It was dated 2 years ago. She had thought of everything. And finally, a single sheet with notes in Lisa's handwriting. Stagers, Tuesday. Declutter. Remove personal photos. Neutral paint. Garden is a plus. And at the bottom, do not let Mom find out. I sat down heavily in the desk chair, the papers spread before me. The evidence was concrete, inescapable. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, cold-hearted project. She had been planning this for months, perhaps longer. She had sat in this house, drunk my tea, and talked about her work, all while compiling the paperwork to have me declared dead. The hurt was a vast, empty chamber inside me. But as I stared at her notes, at the clinical words declutter and remove personal photos, the chamber began to fill with something else. A resolve as hard and polished as stone. She wanted to declutter my life, to remove me. I would not be removed. I gathered the papers and placed them back in the black folder. I returned the folder to its hiding place. I needed her to believe her plan was still on track. I needed her to be confident. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Marcy Thompson would arrive with prospective buyers. She would be nervous, expecting a scene. Lisa would be elsewhere, waiting for a report, believing her fiction was holding. I would be here. I would not be a ghost. I would be the homeowner. I would welcome them in. I would offer them tea, perhaps. I would give them a tour. A real tour. The first faint outline of a plan began to form in my mind. It was not a plan of shouting or accusation. That would come later, and it would be private. This was a plan of education, a plan of demonstration. I would show these strangers exactly what they were considering buying. Not just a house, a life. I stood and walked back to the kitchen. I picked up the garden shears from the counter. The blades were still dirty. I cleaned them meticulously under the tap, drying them with a dish towel until they shone. I placed them back in their designated drawer. Then I took a deep breath, the air still sweet with the smell of roses from the open window. I looked around my kitchen at the evidence of my ongoing existence. The betrayal was a fact now, a piece of data to be incorporated. The emotional storm would have to wait. There was work to do. I had a showing to prepare for. The black folder was back in its place, a secret returned to its hiding spot. I closed the filing cabinet drawer with a solid thud. The sound echoed in the quiet office. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the cool metal handle. The evidence was no longer an abstract shock. It was a physical object with weight and corners. My next steps required precision. I turned to the old desktop computer on the oak desk. I pressed the power button. The machine whirred to life with a series of clicks and groans. I rarely used it, preferring the tactile certainty of paper, but Lisa had set it up for me years ago. "Just for bills and email, Mom," she had said. I logged in. The password was Robert's birthday. Lisa knew that. My email inbox was sparse. Newsletters from botanical societies, a few receipts for online purchases. I navigated to the sent folder. Empty. The deleted items folder. Also empty. She would have been careful, but she also might have underestimated my tenacity, assuming my technological discomfort was a form of blindness. I opened the internet browser. The homepage was set to a search engine. I clicked on the History tab. A long list of websites appeared. Most were mine, gardening forums, library association pages. But scattered among them, from dates spanning the last 3 months, were other entries. Real estate valuation sites, pages for Crestview Realty, articles titled "How to Stage a Home for a Quick Sale" and "Understanding Probate Law for Estates." I examined each one. She had used my computer. She had sat in this chair in my house and researched how to sell it out from under me. The clinical nature of the search terms was its own kind of violence. Cost of professional home staging, removing personal items for viewings, executor responsibilities. I wrote down the most pertinent web addresses on a notepad. Then I cleared the browser history. I did not want her to know I had seen her trail. Let her think her tracks were covered. The search through physical spaces continued. I moved through the house not as its owner, but as an investigator. I looked for signs of her preparatory work, for the blueprint of my erasure. In the hall closet behind the winter coats, I found a cardboard box I did not recognize. I pulled it out. Inside were rolls of painter's tape, color swatches in neutral tones, seashell gray, linen white, and a brochure for a local home staging company. A business card was paperclipped to it. On the back, in Lisa's handwriting, was a note. "Call to confirm 48 HRS before listing goes live." So she had a timeline. The listing was not yet active, but it was imminent. The showing tomorrow was a preview, likely for a buyer her agent had lined up privately. She was moving quickly. I returned the box to its exact position. The order of the rolls of tape mattered. I noted it. My bedroom was next. I approached it as a stranger might. The room was clean but lived in. The quilt on my bed was the one my mother had made. Photographs of Lisa at various ages sat on the dresser alongside one of Robert and me on our wedding day. A stack of library books rested on the nightstand. Would a stager remove these? Yes. The photos would be packed away. The quilt would be replaced with a solid color duvet. The books would disappear. The room would become a generic template of a bedroom devoid of history or personality. A shell. I opened my jewelry box. My mother's simple pearl necklace was there. My wedding band. Nothing of significant monetary value. She had not taken anything. This was not about stealing heirlooms. It was about claiming the entire structure, the vessel itself, and discarding the life within it as mere clutter. The anger remained a cold, solid mass. I acknowledged it and moved past it. Emotion was a luxury for later. I needed to understand her rationale. Greed was the obvious answer, but it felt incomplete. Lisa had a good job. She was not desperate. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold. I considered our recent interactions. Her visits had become less frequent, more hurried. Her comments about the house had taken on a new edge. "This place is a lot for you to manage, Mom. You know, a nice condo would be so much easier. This neighborhood is changing." I had heard them as concern, clumsy perhaps, but born of love. I had defended my home, my independence. I now heard them as reconnaissance. She was assessing my attachment, measuring the resistance she would face. The final piece of the puzzle arrived via the postal service that afternoon. I retrieved the mail from the box at the end of the drive. Among the bills and catalogs was a formal-looking letter from Crestview Realty, addressed to the estate of Alina Vance. I opened it. It was a confirmation of appointment for a pre-listing walkthrough and valuation assessment, scheduled for the day after tomorrow. So the showing tomorrow was a private preview. The official market launch was to follow immediately after. Marcy Thompson, or perhaps her broker, was coming to put a price on my life. The letter listed Lisa Vance Carter as the primary contact. I placed this letter with the notepad containing the web addresses. My evidence file was growing. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the kitchen. I had the facts. I had the timeline. The showing was tomorrow at 2. The realtor, Marcy, would arrive nervous and complicit. The prospective buyers were unknown. Lisa would be absent, believing her fiction intact. My initial paralysis was gone. In its place was a clear, narrow path. Confronting Lisa now would only lead to denials, tears, or accusations. It would be a private drama with no witnesses. It would change nothing. She would spin a story about worrying for my health, about wanting to simplify my life. She might even enlist doctors, suggesting confusion. I had seen such things happen. No, the confrontation had to occur on different terms. It had to be inescapable. It had to have an audience. I would not prevent the showing. I would attend it. But I would not be a ghost haunting the halls. I would be the hostess. I would reclaim the narrative in the most direct way possible, by being alive, present, and unequivocally in charge. The plan began to solidify from a vague notion into a series of actionable steps. This was not about vengeance as an explosion. It was about correction. It was about forcing truth into a space she had filled with lies. I started with the living room. I did not clean or declutter. Instead, I curated. I adjusted the angle of the photograph of Robert and me so it faced the entrance more directly. I opened the family album to a specific page, Lisa's 5th birthday party in this very room, and left it on the coffee table. I took my current library book, a biography of a botanist, and placed it open on the arm of my reading chair, a bookmark about halfway through. In the kitchen, I selected a mixing bowl. I measured out flour, sugar, butter. I began to bake an apple pie. The process was methodical. The peeling of apples, the blending of cinnamon and nutmeg, the lattice weave of the crust. The act was normal, domestic. It was also a deliberate creation of evidence. A house being staged for sale does not smell of baking. It smells of clean linen and emptiness. My house would smell of apples and warmth and ongoing life. As the pie baked, I walked to my small home office once more. I took out a sheet of my own stationery. I wrote a simple note in my clear, looping handwriting. To the prospective buyers. Welcome to my home. I am Alina Vance. I have lived here for 32 years. I raised my daughter here. I tend the garden you see outside. Please make yourself comfortable. The pie is fresh. Sincerely, asterisk. Alina Vance, homeowner. I placed the note in a clean envelope. I would leave it on the entryway table tomorrow. The pie finished baking. I set it on the cooling rack. The scent filled the house. I looked around. Nothing was out of place, yet everything was now in its asterisk right asterisk place. Each object was a testament, a rebuttal to the story of my death. I had transformed from a victim of the plot into its stage manager. The documents in the filing cabinet were my proof. The curated rooms were my testimony. The pie was my exhibit A. Lisa had created paper ghosts. Tomorrow, I would show everyone what a living woman looked like. The scent of apple pie had settled into the house overnight, a sweet, stubborn fact in the air. Morning light found me in the garden. I was not pruning or weeding. I was inspecting. I examined the climbing roses on the trellis, the tidy rows of lavender, the vegetable patch where tomato plants stood staked and orderly. This garden was my resume, written in blooms and produce. It would be part of my presentation. I went back inside. The note I had written was on the entryway table, the envelope crisp and white. I placed it precisely in the center. I checked the living room. The open photo album remained on the coffee table. My reading chair held its book. Everything was ready. At noon, I changed my clothes. I selected a simple linen dress ironed in a deep blue. I fastened my mother's pearls around my neck. I arranged my silver gray hair. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a vengeful specter. I saw a homeowner, a retired librarian, a woman expecting guests. The image was calm and composed. It was armor. I made a pot of tea and set a tray with 3 cups and saucers. The pie sat on the kitchen counter, its lattice crust golden. I covered it with a clean glass dome. The stage was set. Now I waited. At 1:45, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. A young woman in a navy blazer and slacks got out. Marcy Thompson. She clutched a leather folder to her chest. She stood for a moment, staring at the house, then took a deep breath and walked toward the front door. She did not use a key. She rang the bell. I watched her through the sidelight window. Her posture was stiff. I waited for the second chime to fade before I turned the knob and opened the door. Her eyes widened. Her professional smile, which had been fixed in place, faltered and vanished. "Mrs. Vance!" Her voice was a strained whisper. "Ms. Thompson," I said, my tone neutral. "You're early, please come in." She hesitated on the threshold, as if crossing it would cement her complicity. Then she stepped inside. I thought I should preview the space before the clients arrive." Her gaze darted around the foyer, taking in the lived-in warmth, the family photos on the wall, the smell of pie and tea. This was not an empty house. It was an occupied home. Her confusion was palpable. "That's perfectly reasonable," I said, leading her into the living room. "Can I offer you some tea? The water is just boiled." No, thank you." She remained standing, her knuckles white on her folder. "Mrs. Vance, I have to say again how terribly sorry I am about this situation. I had no idea." "I believe you," I said, pouring a cup of tea for myself. I did not offer again. "You were acting on the information provided to you. You are not the author of this fiction." The word fiction made her flinch. "Your daughter, she provided documentation." "I am aware of the documentation." I took a sip of tea. "Tell me about the buyers." She blinked, thrown by the normalcy of the question. "They're a young couple, the Harrisons, first-time buyers. They have a pre-approval letter. They're very excited about the garden. Lisa, your daughter, emphasized that as a key feature." "It is a key feature," I agreed. "It requires 30 years of work. It's not merely a landscaping item. It's a history." Marcy shifted her weight. She looked at the open photo album. She saw the picture of a cake-covered Lisa, beaming in this room. "You're really going to be here for the showing." "I am the owner," I said. "Where else would I be?" "But what are you going to do?" The question burst from her, stripped of professionalism. "I am going to welcome them to my home. I am going to show them the property. I will answer their questions honestly." I looked at her directly. "My dispute is not with them, Ms. Thompson. It is not even with you at this moment. You are here to facilitate a sale. I am here to facilitate the truth. Our tasks are now aligned, whether you wish it or not." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes held a trapped, anxious light. "My broker, if he finds out I knew." "Your broker will find out the truth today regardless. The only variable is your role in it. You can be the agent who unknowingly listed a living woman's home, or you can be the agent who assisted in a fraudulent scheme." How you proceed in the next hour will influence that perception. I had stated it plainly. It was not a threat. It was an assessment of cause and effect. She absorbed it, her shoulders slumping slightly. The fight went out of her. She was not a villain. She was a young person in over her head. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice small. "Nothing different from what you planned. Introduce the clients. Proceed with the showing. I will handle the rest. When they have questions for the executor, you will direct them to me." She nodded slowly, defeated. "Okay." "There is a note for them on the entry table," I added. "Please leave it there." She glanced at the white envelope but did not touch it. The sound of another car pulling up broke the silence. 2 doors opened and closed. Marcy's head snapped toward the window. "They're here." "Then you should greet them," I said. I remained seated in the living room. I picked up my teacup. "I will be in here, bring them through." Marcy smoothed her blazer, fixed a hollow version of her smile back on her face, and walked to the front door. I heard it open. "Hello, you must be the Harrisons. I'm Marcy Thompson. Welcome, welcome. Please come on in." Their voices filtered in, bright and eager. A man's voice, a woman's laugh. They stepped into the foyer. "Oh, what a lovely entryway," the woman said. "Is that apple pie I smell?" the man asked, his tone cheerful. Marcy's reply was slightly strained. "Yes, it seems so." A pause. "There's a note here for you." I heard the rustle of paper as the envelope was opened. A moment of silence as they read my words. I could imagine their faces, the confusion as they processed, Alina Vance, homeowner. The man spoke first, his voice lower now. Marcy, this note says the homeowner is here." "There seems to be a bit of a situation," Marcy said, her words rushed. "Perhaps we should just start the tour. The living room is right through here." Their footsteps approached. I set my teacup down on its saucer. The sound was quiet but distinct in the hush. Marcy appeared in the archway, her smile brittle. "And this is the main living area. As you can see, it's filled with natural light." The couple followed her in. They were young, perhaps early 30s. He wore chinos and a polo shirt. She had on a summer dress. They looked pleasant, normal. Their eyes swept the room and landed on me. I stood up, smooth and slow. I offered a small, polite smile. "Good afternoon. I'm Alina Vance. You must be Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. Please forgive me for not greeting you at the door. My knees aren't what they used to be." The silence in the room was absolute. The young couple, the Harrisons, stared at me. The man's mouth was slightly open. The woman's hand had drifted to her throat. Marcy stood frozen beside them, a statue of professional dread. "I'm sorry," the woman, Mrs. Harrison, said finally, her voice thin with confusion. "The note, it said homeowner, but we were told." She trailed off, looking desperately at Marcy. Marcy's eyes were wide. She said nothing. I gestured to the sofa. "Please, sit down. This is clearly a confusing situation for everyone. I've made tea." They did not sit. They remained standing, too dear caught in the sudden glare of truth. "We were told the owner had passed," Mr. Harrison stated, his tone shifting from eager to cautious. "That this was an estate sale." "I can see why you would think that," I said, my voice calm and even. I moved to the tea tray and began pouring 2 more cups. The familiar ritual gave them time to process. "It appears my daughter, Lisa, provided that information to Ms. Thompson. It is, unfortunately, incorrect. As you can see, I am very much alive. This is my home. I have no intention of selling it." Mrs. Harrison's face flushed a deep red. "Oh my God, this is terrible. We're so sorry. We had no idea." She shot a look of pure horror at Marcy, who flinched. "There is no need for you to apologize," I said, handing her a cup of tea. She took it automatically, the china trembling in her hand. "You acted in good faith. The deception was not yours." I handed a second cup to Mr. Harrison. He accepted it, his expression a mix of embarrassment and dawning anger. "Marcy," he said, his voice tight, "what is this?" The young agent found her voice, though it was strained. "There's been a profound misunderstanding with the listing party. I was provided with documentation. I verified it to the best of my ability." The rehearsed lines sounded hollow in the face of my living presence. A misunderstanding, I repeated, not unkindly. I sat back in my chair, cradling my own cup. It is more than that, I think. It is a story, and stories have power, but so does truth. I looked at the couple. You came to see a house. Would you allow me to show you my home? The real version, not the staged fiction. They exchanged a glance. Curiosity was now battling their mortification. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. Yes, okay. The garden was mentioned as a key feature, I began, leading them to the large window. My husband Robert built that rose trellis the summer Lisa turned 10. He wasn't much of a carpenter. I pointed to a slight sag in the middle. See there, he always meant to fix it. I left it as is. It reminds me of him. The lavender along the path, I planted that the year after he died. It's good for calming the nerves. I spoke without sentimentality, stating facts. This happened. I did this. It is here. The Harrisons listened, their eyes following my gestures. Shall we continue the tour? I asked. I led them from the living room into the dining room. This table sat 20 for Thanksgiving every year until recently. The scratch here, I said, running a finger over a small mark near the head, is from Lisa's high school art project, a wire sculpture. She was so proud of it. We moved to the kitchen. The pie sat under its dome. I bake when I'm thinking, I said. This seemed like a baking day. The oven is original to the house. It has a hot spot in the back right corner. You learn to work with it. Mrs. Harrison was staring at the array of magnets and photos on the refrigerator. School pictures of Lisa, a postcard from a trip Robert and I took, a grocery list in my handwriting. The sheer normalcy of it all was the most damning evidence against the story of my death. The paperwork, Mr. Harrison said quietly. The death certificate, how? That is a question for my daughter and perhaps the authorities, I said. I only discovered the scheme yesterday. My priority was to ensure no one else was victimized by it. You seem like nice young people. You don't deserve to be entangled in a family drama. The word drama was insufficient, but it was polite. It allowed them a way out with their dignity. We walked down the hallway. I paused at the door to my home office. This was Robert's study, then mine. Every book on those shelves has been read, some many times. I did not show them the filing cabinet. That was for later, for other audiences. Finally, I stopped at a closed door. This is my bedroom. I opened it. The quilt, the photos, the library books. A stager would have cleared all of this. They would have painted the walls a neutral color. They would have made it a blank space. It is not a blank space. It is my room. I have slept here for 3 decades. I turned to face them. They stood in the hallway, looking past me into the room that so clearly belonged to a living person. The charade was fully dismantled. Mr. Harrison let out a long breath. This is insane. I'm so sorry you're going through this, Ms. Vance. Mrs. Vance, I corrected gently. And thank you. The apology again is not yours to make. We should go, Mrs. Harrison said, her voice full of genuine sympathy. We've taken up enough of your time. This is private. Before you go, I said, please have a slice of pie. It feels wrong to send you away empty-handed after such a strange experience, and you did admire the smell. They hesitated but nodded. It was a gesture of peace, a way to end the surreal visit on a note of human kindness. In the kitchen, I cut 2 generous slices and placed them on plates. They ate standing up, making polite comments about the flavor. The normal act seemed to ground them. Marcy had followed us in silent misery. She now spoke. I will cancel everything on my end immediately. The listing will be pulled. I will be speaking to my broker. See that you do, I said. I handed her a small slip of paper. This is my direct number. Your broker may call me to verify the situation. I suggest he does so before taking any further action. She took the paper as if it were a live coal. Of course. The Harrisons finished their pie, placed the plates in the sink, and offered more awkward apologies. I walked them to the door. Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Harrison said at the threshold. And good luck. I hope you work things out. I intend to, I said. I watched them walk quickly to their car, not looking back. Marcy lingered for a moment, her professional facade completely gone. She just looked young and scared. "What are you going to do?" she asked again, the same question from before, but now weighted with the knowledge of what had just transpired. "I am going to wait," I said. "The next move is not mine. It belongs to the person who started this. Thank you for your assistance today, Ms. Thompson." She gave a jerky nod and left, closing the door softly behind her. The house was quiet again. The teacups were on the table. 2 plates with crumbs sat in the sink. The pie was missing 2 slices. The evidence of the visit was mundane. I stood in the silent living room, the note from the entry table now in my hand. I had shown them. The truth was no longer a private wound. It had witnesses. The first part of my plan was complete. The quiet after the front door closed was different from the quiet before. It held the echo of their voices, the ghost of their shock. I cleared the teacups and plates from the living room. I washed them by hand, the warm water and soap a mundane anchor. The act of drying each piece and returning it to its proper cupboard was a reassertion of order. My order. The phone rang while my hands were still damp. I looked at the caller ID. It was not Lisa. It was a number I did not recognize, but with a local prefix. I answered. "Mrs. Vance, it's Marcy Thompson." Her voice was hushed, strained. "I'm calling from my car." "I assumed you would be speaking with your broker," I said, placing the final cup on the shelf. "I did. He's not happy. He wants to speak with you directly. He said he'll be calling within the hour." She paused. I could hear the hum of her car's engine. "He also wants to speak with Lisa. He demanded her number. I gave it to him." "That was the correct action," I said. "He needs to verify the facts from all involved parties." "There's more." Her words came out in a rush. "After I left you, I tried calling Lisa several times. She finally answered. I told her what happened, that you were there, that the showing was a disaster." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "What did she say?" A long exhale crackled down the line. At first, she didn't say anything. Then she said, "What did she do?" Not, "Is she okay?" Or, "What happened?" Just, "What did she do?" Like you were a problem she hadn't fully contained. I closed my eyes for a moment. The cold knot in my stomach tightened. "I see." "She was angry at me. She said I had bungled it, that I should have called her the moment you answered the phone yesterday. She said." Marcy's voice dropped even lower. "She said, I told you she was confused. I told you she wasn't competent to handle her own affairs anymore." The narrative was shifting. I had anticipated this. From fraud to a story of incapacity. A different path to the same goal, control of the house. "Did you believe her?" I asked. "No," Marcy said, the word firm. "Not after today. A confused person doesn't bake a pie and write a note and give a tour like that. A confused person doesn't look you in the eye and dismantle a lie with pure, calm fact." I told her that. I told her the buyers were horrified, that they left apologizing to you. What was her response to that? "She hung up on me." Marcy's tone was flat. "My broker is furious. He's talking about legal liability, about fraud. He's going to call her too. I think she's going to come to the house. To see you." "I expect she will," I said. The pieces were moving as predicted. "Thank you for the information, Ms. Thompson." "Mrs. Vance," she hesitated. "What are you going to do when she comes?" "I am going to be home," I said. "I am going to offer her tea, and then we are going to have a conversation that is 30 years overdue." I ended the call. The broker would call soon. Lisa would come. The confrontation was now inevitable and imminent. I had stripped away her fraudulent storyline with the buyers. Now I had to defend against the new narrative, the one about my failing mind. I went to the home office. From the filing cabinet, I retrieved the black folder with the forged documents. I also removed a different, older folder. This one contained recent bank statements, paid property tax receipts, a certificate from a financial literacy seminar for seniors I had attended last year, and a letter from my doctor from my last physical, 6 months prior, stating I was in good health for my age. It concluded with the sentence, "Patient is mentally sharp and fully capable of managing her own affairs." I placed both folders on the kitchen table. The contrast was stark. On one side, Lisa's forgeries and cold notes. On the other, the mundane paperwork of a competent, organized life. The phone rang again. The display showed Crestview Realty, Maine. I answered. Alina Vance speaking. Mrs. Vance, this is Ben Crawford, broker of record at Crestview. The voice was older, male, brimming with a forced, hearty professionalism. Marcy Thompson has informed me of a deeply concerning situation. Has she? I said, noncommittal. I want to offer my most sincere personal apologies for this travesty. We take verification of our listings extremely seriously. We were provided what appeared to be valid legal documentation. Appearances can be deceiving, Mr. Crawford. Indeed, I have already attempted to contact your daughter, Lisa Vance Carter. I left a firm message demanding she contact my office immediately with an explanation. In the meantime, I have pulled the listing permanently from all our channels. We will, of course, be conducting a full internal review. Thank you, I said. There is also the matter of the fraudulent documents. This goes beyond a simple misunderstanding. This could constitute criminal activity. Are you planning to involve the authorities? I let the question hang for a moment. That is a decision I have not yet made. My immediate concern was stopping the sale of my home. You have assisted with that. For now, that is sufficient. He sounded almost disappointed. A scandal could be messy for his business. A private resolution was cleaner. I understand. Please know we are at your disposal. If you need any notarized statements from our office regarding the misinformation we received, we will provide them. I may take you up on that. Thank you for calling, Mr. Crawford. I hung up. The professional world was now aligned. The realty company was in retreat, covering its own liability. Lisa was isolated. The afternoon light began to slant through the windows. I was not afraid of her arrival. I was prepared. I reheated the kettle and made a fresh pot of tea, a dark oolong. I set 2 cups on the table beside the 2 folders. Then I waited. I did not pace. I sat in the living room and attempted to read my book. The words blurred. I was not thinking of the past, of birthday parties or school projects. I was thinking of the present, of boundaries, of consequences. I was thinking of the woman I raised and the stranger she had become. The sound of a car door slamming outside was sharp and angry. It was not the gentle click of the Harrisons' door or the subdued closure of Marcy's. This was a punctuation mark of fury. Footsteps fast and hard came up the walk. A key scratched at the lock. She still had her key, and the front door swung open. Lisa stood in the doorway, her face flushed, her eyes blazing. She was dressed in expensive workout clothes, as if she had been interrupted from another, better life. She looked at me sitting calmly in my chair, and her expression twisted. "Mom," the word was an accusation. "What the hell did you do?" She did not close the door. It remained open behind her, a rectangle of harsh afternoon light. I placed a bookmark in my novel and set it on the side table. I did not stand up. "I made tea," I said. "It's on the kitchen table. Close the door, please. You're letting the cool air out." My calmness seemed to inflame her further. She slammed the door shut. The sound reverberated through the house. "I don't want tea. I want to know what you said to those people. To the agent. You embarrassed me. You made me look like a liar." "You are a liar, Lisa." I stated it as a simple fact. I finally rose from my chair, my movements slow and deliberate. "The evidence is on the kitchen table. I suggest you look at it before you say anything else you'll regret." I walked past her into the kitchen. I heard her footsteps follow, heavy on the floor. I took my seat at the table, facing the 2 folders. I poured tea into both cups. She stopped at the edge of the table, her eyes darting from the familiar black folder to the older, worn one. Her bravado faltered for a second. "What is this?" "This," I said, tapping the black folder, "is the story you told, the death certificate, the forged will, the listing agreement, your notes about decluttering and staging." I opened it and slid the death certificate toward her. My name, the official-looking seal. Cardiac arrest, a creative choice. Her face paled beneath the flush. She did not touch the paper. "And this," I continued, opening the second folder, "is the truth. My most recent bank statements showing balanced accounts. My property tax receipts paid on time. A letter from Dr. Evans stating I am of sound mind. A certificate from a financial management course. I looked up at her. Which story do you think holds more weight now that your first one has collapsed? She pulled out a chair and sat down, not because she wanted to, but because her legs seemed to give way. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. I pushed the cup of tea toward her. Start with why you told a real estate agent I was dead. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup but did not drink. She stared into the dark liquid. This house, it's too much for you. It's an anchor. The yard work, the maintenance, it's a burden. You're just too stubborn to see it. So your solution was to kill me off. Not to discuss it, not to help me find a solution, but to forge a death certificate and sell my home out from under me. It's not just a home. The words burst out, sharp and frustrated. It's an asset, a massively underutilized asset. Do you know what this property is worth? You're sitting on a fortune and you're using it to grow tomatoes and store old books. I have debts. I have plans. This could set me up. It could set us up. I could have gotten you a nice, modern condo, something easy. I listened. Each word was a chip of ice falling into place. You decided my life, my history, was underutilized. You decided my comfort, my memories, were less important than your debts and your plans. You did not ask. You planned a theft. It's not theft, it's my inheritance. Her eyes met mine, defiant. It is not your inheritance while I am alive. That is the law. That is also basic morality. You attempted to bypass both. I was going to take care of you. Her voice rose again. With the money, I would have taken care of everything. By making me a ghost in my own life, by erasing me before I was gone. That is not care, Lisa. That is disposal. I kept my voice low, forcing her to lean in to hear. And then, when your first plan failed, you told the agent I was confused, incompetent. What was the next step? Guardianship papers? A cozy facility somewhere? She looked away, her jaw tight. The silence was an admission. I want to understand the mechanics, I said, my tone shifting to the clinical. The death certificate, where did you get it? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. I would like to know how thoroughly you researched this. She was silent for a long moment. Online, she muttered finally. A template, it looked real enough. And you thought no one would check, that I would never find out. I thought you'd never answer that phone. The bitterness was raw. You're always in the garden. I told the agent to call the listed number. I didn't think you pick up. I didn't think you'd do anything. There it was, the core of her miscalculation. She saw my life here as passive, a quiet waiting for the end. She did not see it as active stewardship. She did not see me as a person who would fight. You underestimated me, I said. She didn't answer. She took a sip of the tea, then made a face as if it were bitter. The realtor's broker is involved now, I informed her. He is aware of the fraudulent documents. He is considering his legal options. The young couple you tried to sell to are also aware. They were apologizing to me Lisa. They saw me. They saw this house for what it is, a home, not just an asset. The color drained completely from her face. The public exposure, the professional repercussions, these were currencies she understood. You told them. I showed them. There's a difference. She put her head in her hands. The anger was dissolving, replaced by a dawning, fearful comprehension of the consequences. What are you going to do? That depends on you, I said. I closed both folders. The police are an option. Fraud is a crime. Forgery is a crime. I have the evidence. I have witnesses. The realty broker would likely cooperate. Her head snapped up. You wouldn't. I am considering it. I let the words hang. But it is not my preferred outcome. Jail does not interest me. Public scandal, while perhaps deserved, is messy and painful for everyone. I have a different proposal. She watched me, wary, like a cornered animal. You will take these, I said, pushing the black folder and its contents toward her. You will destroy every copy. You will call the staging company and cancel any appointment. You will deal with the realty broker and his threats at your own expense. You will handle the fallout entirely on your own. And then what? And then you and I will begin a new arrangement. You will enroll in and complete a course of financial counseling. I will receive confirmation from the counselor. You will also agree to attend family therapy with me, a minimum of 6 sessions. You will pay for it. She stared at me, incredulous. Therapy? You're punishing me with asterisk therapy. I am attempting to salvage what is left of our relationship. I am also establishing boundaries. These are my conditions. They are not negotiable. Or else you go to the police. Or else I go to the police, I confirmed. She leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. The defiance was returning, but it was weaker now, undercut by fear. This is blackmail. No, I said. This is consequence management. You created a crisis. These are the terms of its resolution. You can accept them or you can accept the legal system's terms. The choice is yours. I finished my tea. The cup was empty. I had said everything I needed to say. The ball was in her court. The quiet in the kitchen was thick, charged with the weight of the decision I had laid before her. She sat across from me, the silence stretching like a wire pulled taut. Her eyes moved from my face to the black folder, then to the window, where the late sun gilded the edges of her mother's garden. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the weighing of humiliation against incarceration, of therapy against a police record. You're serious, she said finally, not a question. I have never been more serious. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Financial counseling, family therapy, you've been thinking about this. Since yesterday, you left me little else to think about. Her shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a sullen, defeated acceptance. Fine, I'll do it. I'll take the damn counseling. I'll go to your therapy sessions. They are not my sessions. They are ours. A necessary meeting on neutral ground with a referee. She waved a hand, dismissing the semantics. Whatever, I'll do it. But the broker, Ben Crawford, he's not going to just let this go. He's talking about fraud about his company's reputation. That is your responsibility to manage, I said, unmoved. You created the problem with his company. You will resolve it. You will assure him that the matter is settled between us, that no legal action will be taken by me, and that you will provide whatever written assurances he requires to consider the matter closed. You will also ensure he does not contact me again unless I initiate it. And if he doesn't agree, if he wants to press charges himself, then you will need a lawyer. That, too, is your responsibility. The magnitude of the mess she had made was settling onto her. The angry energy was gone, leaving behind a weary resentment. You've got it all figured out, haven't you? I have had to. I pushed my chair back and stood. The terms are clear. You will provide me with proof of enrollment in a financial counseling program within 1 week. We will schedule our first therapy session within 2 weeks. You will handle the fallout with Crestview Realty immediately. In return, I will not file a police report. I will consider the matter of the attempted sale closed. She stood as well, not looking at me. She picked up the black folder, holding it as if it were contaminated. Can I go? Yes. She turned and walked out of the kitchen. I did not follow her. I heard the front door open and close, more quietly this time. The house was mine again, the silence now one of resolution rather than shock. I cleared the teacups. The pot was still half full. I poured the cool tea down the sink. The ritual of washing up, of restoring order to my kitchen, felt final. The battle was over. The terms of occupation had been redefined. The phone rang as I was drying my hands. It was Marcy Thompson. Mrs. Vance, Ben spoke with Lisa. He just called me. What was the outcome? He's satisfied. For now. She agreed to sign a statement acknowledging she provided false documentation, releasing the agency from any liability, and agreeing not to list the property with any agency without your explicit, notarized consent. He's having it drawn up. He said she sounded cooperative. She is being pragmatic, I said. He also said he advised her to get the originals of those documents back from you, for her own protection. She has them, I said. The originals are in her possession. I did not mention the photocopies I had made earlier that day, now stored in a safe deposit box at my bank. Some insurance was necessary. Marcy let out a long breath. Okay, good. I wanted to let you know. And to apologize again personally, I should have seen it. The signs were there. The house, it never felt like an empty property. It felt like a home. It is, I said. Thank you for calling, Marcy. After I hung up, I walked through the quiet rooms. The photo album was still open on the coffee table. I closed it and returned it to its shelf. I put the biography back on the nightstand in my bedroom. I removed the note from the entryway table and tore it into small pieces. The stage was being dismantled. The performance was over. In the kitchen, the remaining apple pie sat under its glass dome. I cut a small slice for myself and ate it standing at the counter. It was still good, sweet, with a hint of tartness from the apples. The victory, if that was the word for it, did not feel sweet. It felt solid, heavy, like a stone wall I had been forced to build between myself and my only child. The wall was necessary for my protection, but it blocked the light nonetheless. I thought about the therapy sessions. They were a condition, a demand for a reckoning I knew might never truly come. But they were also a thread, however thin, still connecting two sides of a canyon. I had not cut her off completely. I had forced a bridge, narrow and precarious, but a bridge. It was more than she had offered me. As dusk fell, I went to the back door and looked out at the garden. The roses were dark shapes against the fatting sky. The lavender was a soft gray blur. This was the life she had tried to package and sell. This was the life I had defended. Tomorrow I would wake up in my own house. I would make my tea. I would work in my garden. The silence would be my own again, not a lie told to strangers. The plan was complete. The revenge, such as it was this: the uninterrupted continuity of my ordinary, lived-in life. She had wanted to make me a ghost. I had made myself, once again, the owner. The agreed-upon week passed with a brittle quiet. No phone calls from Lisa, no further contact from the realty office. The house settled back into its familiar rhythms, but the silence now had a different quality. It was no longer just peaceful, it was watchful. On the 8th day, a white envelope arrived in the mail. It was from a financial counseling service called Fiscal Foundations. Inside was a copy of a completed enrollment form with Lisa's signature, and a note from a counselor named David confirming her first appointment the following Tuesday. The paperwork was efficient, impersonal. She had met the first deadline. I placed the letter on the kitchen table. It was a transaction, not a peace offering, but it was a step. She was following the rules, however resentfully. That afternoon, as I was repotting a fern on the back porch, I saw a silver sedan pull up to the curb. Marcy Thompson got out. She was not in her professional blazer today, just slacks and a simple shirt. She walked up the path slowly, her steps hesitant. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the screen door. Ms. Thompson. Mrs. Vance, I hope it's okay that I stopped by. I was in the neighborhood. The excuse was transparent. She held a small, gift-wrapped parcel. Come in, I said, holding the door open. She entered and stood awkwardly in the kitchen. She held out the parcel. This is for you. It's not much, just a small thing. I took it. The wrapping paper had a botanical print. I set it on the table. Would you like some iced tea? Yes, please. That would be nice. I prepared 2 glasses. We sat at the table. She did not speak until I had taken a sip. I finished my internal review with Ben, she said, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. It's over. The file is closed. Lisa signed the release. I wanted to see you, to say I'm sorry in person without any professional pretext. I appreciate that, I said. What you did, it was remarkable. The way you handled everything, with such composure. She looked around the kitchen, her eyes taking in the signs of life. I've been in a lot of houses. You can always tell the difference between a home and a property. This is a home. I should have seen that immediately. I let the paperwork override my own judgment. You trusted what was presented, I said. That is not always a flaw. It was here, she shook her head. I keep thinking about the pie, the note. You turned a hostile situation into a lesson. For me, for the buyers, for Lisa, I don't think I could have done that. You're young. You will learn that sometimes the most powerful response is not a counterattack. It is the simple, stubborn act of standing your ground and stating the truth. She nodded, absorbing this. How are you, really? I considered the question. I am intact. The house is mine. My life continues. There is damage, of course, but it is contained. And Lisa? That remains to be seen. I gestured to the enrollment letter on the table. She has begun the financial counseling. The therapy sessions are next. The process is underway. It will be a long one. Marcy was quiet for a moment. Can I ask, why therapy? I mean, after what she did, most people would just cut ties. Call the police. You're forcing a connection. It is not for her benefit alone, I explained, my tone measured. Though she may one day come to see it as such, it is for mine. I need to understand what happened. I need to hear her reasons, spoken in a place where lies are harder to maintain. And if reconciliation is ever possible, the path must be built on something more solid than silence or legal threats. This establishes a framework. It's very brave. It is necessary. I took another drink of tea. The ice had begun to melt. There is something you can do for me if you are willing. Of course, anything. I took a plain note card from a drawer and wrote a brief message. I slid it across the table to her. I would like you to give this to Lisa. Do not mail it. Hand it to her personally the next time you see her. It is a reminder of the next step. Marcy picked up the card. She read the few lines I had written. Her eyes flicked to mine, then back to the card. You want me to be the messenger. You are the one person, aside from us, who knows the full truth of what happened. You are a neutral party. Your involvement gives the process an external reality. It is no longer just a private family argument. It has a witness. She swallowed, then placed the card carefully in her purse. I'll do it. I see her for the final paperwork signing tomorrow. I'll give it to her then. Thank you. We finished our tea. The conversation turned to lighter things, the garden, the upcoming library book sale. It was a civil, ordinary chat. When she stood to leave, she pointed to the gift. You should open that. I untied the ribbon and removed the paper. Inside was a small, framed watercolor painting of a rose. It was simple, well executed. I painted it, she said, a little shyly. It's not much, but when I thought of this house, I thought of your roses. I thought you should have something new, to mark a new start. I looked at the painting. It was a kind gesture from someone who owed me nothing. It's lovely. Thank you, Marcy. She smiled, a real one this time, less burdened. Goodbye, Mrs. Vance. Take care of yourself. I will. I watched her drive away. I hung the small painting on the wall in the hallway, near a photograph of my own garden. It fit. The house was quiet again. I had secured my home, imposed my terms, and now received an apology that felt genuine. The revenge was complete. It was not a dramatic explosion, but a series of deliberate corrective actions. The weight in the house was no longer one of betrayal, but of a difficult, earned peace. The next move was on the therapist's couch in a neutral office, where words would have to do the work that deeds had started. I was ready for that work. The therapy office was in a brick building downtown, on the second floor. The waiting room had neutral-colored furniture and magazines stacked neatly on a table. I arrived 10 minutes early. Lisa was already there, sitting in a chair by the window, scrolling through her phone. She did not look up when I entered. I took a seat across from her. The silence was dense, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. I observed her. She wore a tailored pantsuit, her hair perfectly styled. It was armor, just as my linen dress and pearls had been armor for the showing. We were both dressed for battle in a neutral zone. A door opened, and a woman in her 50s with a calm demeanor smiled at us. Eleanor, Lisa, I'm Dr. Evans, please come in. We followed her into a larger room with comfortable chairs arranged in a loose circle. Books lined the shelves. There were no personal photographs. Dr. Evans took a seat and gestured for us to sit where we liked. Lisa chose a chair as far from mine as possible while still being in the circle. Thank you both for coming, Dr. Evans began. Her voice was warm but professional. This is a space for conversation. My role is to help facilitate that. There are no right or wrong things to say here, but I ask that we all speak with respect. Who would like to start by sharing what brought you here today? Lisa looked at me, her expression challenging. I met her gaze, then turned to Dr. Evans. I will start. My daughter, Lisa, attempted to sell my home without my knowledge or consent. To do so, she provided a real estate agent with a forged death certificate and will, stating I was deceased. I discovered the plan, intervened, and as part of an agreement to avoid legal action, we agreed to attend these sessions. Dr. Evans's face remained neutral, but her eyes focused intently. She turned to Lisa. Lisa, would you like to respond to that summary? Lisa shifted in her chair. It wasn't like that. It was a plan to help her. The house is too big. It's a financial burden. She's getting older. I was going to use the money to get her a better place and secure my own future. She's framing it like a crime. It was a solution. Dr. Evans nodded. So, Alina, you experienced this as a betrayal and a violation. Lisa, you experienced your mother's perspective as a misunderstanding of your intentions. Is that a fair starting point? Yes, I said. Sort of, Lisa said at the same time. Let's explore the word betrayal, Dr. Evans said, looking at me. Alina, can you say more about what that word means in this context? I took a moment. It means my child looked at my life, my home, the place where I raised her and built a life with her father, and saw only an asset. She saw me as an obstacle to that asset. She did not see a person with autonomy or rights. She created a story where I did not exist, and she acted on that story. The betrayal is the complete dismissal of my personhood. Lisa made a sharp noise in her throat. That's so dramatic, I never dismissed you. I was thinking of you, you're just stuck. Stuck in this house, stuck in the past. I was trying to move us both forward. By declaring me dead, my voice was flat. It was a piece of paper, a technicality. Her volume rose. It was a legal document that lied about my very existence. There is no technical death. There is only death, or there is life. You chose to place me in the former category for your convenience. Dr. Evans held up a hand gently. Lisa, let's sit with that for a moment. Your mother is saying the act of creating that document felt to her like an erasure. Can you hear that? Lisa crossed her arms, looking away. I hear it. I just don't agree with the weight she's putting on it. It was a means to an end. And what was the end? Dr. Evans asked. Financial stability, for both of us, freedom from that house. I do not feel unfree in my home, I said. I feel rooted. You feel it is an anchor. That is a difference in perspective. The betrayal was that you decided your perspective was the only valid one, and you acted unilaterally to enforce it. I tried to talk to you. Lisa turned to me, her eyes flashing. For months. This place is too much, Mom. You could travel, Mom. You never listened. You just shut me down. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to accept that it is my life and my home. You were supposed to respect that, even if you disagreed. If you were truly concerned for my well-being, there were other avenues. Home health aides, a property manager. You did not explore those. You went directly to forgery and fraud. That indicates your primary concern was not my welfare, but the asset's liquidation. Lisa stared at me, her mouth a thin line. She had no immediate rebuttal. The truth of my statement hung in the air. Dr. Evans intervened. It sounds like there is a profound disconnect in how each of you views the home. Alina sees it as identity and history. Lisa sees it as a burden and an opportunity. And beneath that, perhaps, there are other feelings. Lisa, when you say your mother is stuck in the past, what past are you referring to? Lisa's defiant posture softened slightly. She looked at her hands. Dad, all of it. It's been 12 years. The house is a museum. Nothing changes. It's like she stopped living when he died. I felt the words like a physical pressure in my chest. I did not stop living. I continued. In the same place with the same memories. That is not stagnation. That is fidelity, and it is my choice. But it's not healthy, Lisa insisted, her voice cracking slightly. To just cling to a place, to things, I wanted to free you from all that. You wanted to free yourself, I said, the words quiet but clear. You find my fidelity painful. You find the reminders of your father, of your childhood, perhaps painful as well. You wanted to clear the stage, not for me, for you." Silence fell. Lisa did not deny it. She looked at the floor. Dr. Evans let the silence sit for a full minute. "Lisa," she said softly, "can you respond to that?" Lisa shook her head slowly. She would not look at either of us. "I don't know." The session continued for another 40 minutes. We circled the same points: autonomy versus intervention, grief versus motion, asset versus home. No breakthroughs occurred. No hugs, no tears of reconciliation, but something did happen. The facts of our positions were laid bare in a neutral space, with a witness. My calm dissection of her actions held up under the clinical light of therapy. Her justifications began to sound thinner, even to herself. When the time was up, Dr. Evans summarized. "You've begun a very difficult conversation today. You've identified core disagreements about the meaning of the home, about autonomy, and about how to handle grief. These are not small things. My suggestion is that you continue this process. We have 5 more sessions contracted. I urge you both to attend them." We stood. Lisa left the room first, without a word. I thanked Dr. Evans and followed. In the parking lot, Lisa was unlocking her car. I stopped a few feet away. "The financial counselor confirmed your first appointment," I said. She nodded, still not looking at me. "I know." "We will meet here again next week at the same time," I said. "I'll be here." She got into her car and drove away. I drove home. The house was waiting, quiet and solid. The therapy had not fixed anything. It had instead made the fracture between us explicit and clear. But clarity, I thought, was a form of progress. It was a map of the damage, and you cannot rebuild anything without first understanding what is broken. The weeks that followed the first therapy session were marked by a procedural rhythm. Every Tuesday, we sat in Dr. Evans's office. The conversations were difficult, circling the same wounds, but they were conversations. Lisa stopped offering justifications for the forgery. Instead, she spoke more about her feelings of being trapped by the past, by the weight of the house and its memories. I spoke of my need for autonomy, for respect. We did not find common ground, but we began to map the distance between our respective shores. The financial counselor's reports came to me, as agreed. Lisa was attending her sessions. The counselor's summaries were professional and vague, but they confirmed engagement. She was following the structure I had imposed. A month after the failed showing, on a Saturday morning, I was in the garden. The summer was turning, the heat beginning to soften. I was dividing a cluster of overgrown daylilies, a tough, repetitive task requiring a sharp spade and strong hands. The soil was dry and resistant. I heard a car pull up. I did not look up from my work. Footsteps approached on the gravel path, hesitant. I knew the sound. I continued to work the spade into the dense root ball, leveraging it apart. "Mom." I paused, one foot on the spade's edge, and looked up. Lisa stood there, wearing old jeans and a t-shirt I didn't recognize. She held no purse, no phone. Her hands were empty. "Lisa." She nodded toward the daylilies. "That looks like a hard job." "It is. They've needed dividing for 2 seasons. I've put it off." A silence stretched between us, filled with the buzz of a nearby bee and the distant sound of a lawnmower. "Can I help?" The question was quiet, almost inaudible. I studied her face. There was no defiance there now, only a kind of weary uncertainty. She was not here to fight. She was here because she did not know where else to be. "The gloves are on the bench," I said, nodding toward the patio. "You'll need the trowel and the hand fork." She went to the bench, put on the gardening gloves that were too big for her, and picked up the tools. She came back and stood beside me, looking down at the clump of roots and foliage I had partially excavated. "What do I do?" "You take the sections I pry loose. Shake off the excess soil. Use the fork to tease the roots apart gently. Look for natural divisions. Then replant them over there in that prepared bed, about a foot apart." I demonstrated, using the spade to cut through the tough center of the plant, then lifting a section free. I shook it, a cloud of dirt falling. She watched, then knelt on the ground beside the bed I had indicated. She took the section from me and began working at the roots with the hand fork, her movements clumsy but careful. We worked in silence for a long time. The only sounds were the scrape of metal on soil, the rustle of leaves, our breathing. It was not a comfortable silence, but it was not hostile. It was the silence of shared, difficult labor. After we had transplanted 3 divisions, she spoke without looking up from her work. The financial counselor, he's making me do a budget, a real one. It's revealing. I thrust the spade into the next section. Revealing how? How much I spend on things that don't matter, how much I was counting on other things. She meant the house. She did not say it. A budget is a form of truth-telling, I said. Yeah, she separated a fan of leaves from the main clump. Dr. Evans says I use anger to avoid other feelings, like shame. I stopped working for a moment. This was new. She was reporting, not arguing. That sounds plausible. She glanced at me, then back at her hands. It's not an excuse. I know. We returned to the work. The sun climbed higher. A line of sweat traced the path of my spine. Lisa wiped her forehead with the back of her glove, leaving a smudge of dirt. This is harder than it looks, she said. Most worthwhile things are. We finished dividing the main clump. The new bed was filled with young, separated plants, their leaves looking slightly shocked but upright. The old, crowded center was gone. I began to water the new plantings. Lisa picked up the discarded foliage and carried it to the compost bin. When she returned, I was coiling the hose. She stood watching the newly planted bed. Will they bloom next year? They will. They'll be stronger for the space. She nodded slowly. We stood there, the work done, the unspoken hovering between us. There was no embrace, no tearful apology, no grand declaration of forgiveness. That was not the currency of this new landscape. I should go, she said, pulling off the oversized gloves. All right. She placed the gloves neatly back on the bench. She started to walk toward the front of the house, then stopped. Therapy is on Tuesday. I know, I will be there. She gave a single nod and left. I heard her car start and drive away. I remained in the garden. The transformed bed was raw earth and hopeful green. The rest of the garden continued, unchanged. The roses, the lavender, the vegetables. It was all still here. It was all still mine. The revenge was complete. It had not been a violent upheaval, but a reclamation. I had reclaimed my home, my narrative, my agency. I had forced the truth into the light. The consequences were still unfolding, a slow, uncertain negotiation between a mother and a daughter across a field of broken trust. I looked at the freshly turned soil. Growth was not a gentle process. It required cutting, dividing, uprooting. It was messy and left things looking temporarily bare, but it was necessary for life to continue. I went inside to wash the dirt from my hands. The house was quiet, waiting for whatever came next. It was no longer a fortress under siege. It was simply a home again with its history intact and its future, however complicated, still its own. The work of tending it and the fragile new growth in its garden would continue.